Welcome to the show where we run you through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. After we run you through the Dolphins news you need to know about, we're going to be previewing options on the table that are left for the Dolphins free agency, more moves that they can make after all the moves they have already made, which is a significant amount. And after that, we're going to answer fans' questions. If you hear noises in the background, it's dogs. I apologize for that. So let's get into the Dolphins news you need to know about. You talk about one of the craziest days I could remember in Dolphins history, especially on the start of free agency, especially under Stephen Ross. When you think about some of the crazy, you think about, this is probably the craziest. I can't really think of another one. Mike Wallace, Sue, Kevin Burnett, Carlos Dansby, Philip Wheeler, Darnell Ellery, Brent Grimes. There's been a lot of them. I think I said Sue. There's been a lot of crazy days in free agency for the Dolphins. But to me, this is probably the craziest one and probably the most hype one because of the circumstances. What this organization has been able to do, and I didn't even think they'd be this aggressive, if I'm being honest with you guys. I really thought this was going to be a quieter free agency than most of us thought it was going to be. I didn't see any of this coming. So again, let's get into this. One of the craziest stories that we've had to cover on this show. The craziest. So let's start with the least exciting one, because we have a lot to go through here. This first news story comes from Pro Football Rumors. The Miami Dolphins have signed Clayton Fejedelem. I hope that's how you say his name. Okay, so this comes from Pro Football Rumors. While it's far from the biggest news in the Dolphins secondary, Miami has agreed to terms with safety and core special teams player from the Cincinnati Bengals, Clayton Fejedelem, on a 3-year deal worth up to $8 million, $3 million in guarantees, according to Tom Pelissero of NFL.com. The Bengals selected Fejedelem in the 7th round of the 2016 draft, and he's appeared in every game for Cincinnati in 4 seasons since. While he started 5 games at safety in 2017 and nabbed an interception and a pair of pass defense, the bulk of his work came on special teams. Over his career, Fejedelem has 77 solo tackles, forced 1 fumble, recovered 2 fumbles, and scored 1 touchdown. Okay, so if you're not familiar with Clayton Fejedelem, he was a pretty good special teams player for the Bengals. And if you remember, this was Andrew Luck's last season as a Colt. He actually won the Bengals a game in Indianapolis where, I can't remember, I think it was Jack Doyle, who was a pretty good tight end, caught a ball over the middle. Clayton, it was like a hit stick in Madden. He hit him, he fumbled the ball, Jack Doyle did. Clayton Fejedelem picked the ball up and returned it for pretty much the game-winning touchdown at that point in the game. So if you don't know who that is, you probably remember that play from years ago. So this isn't a big signing for the Dolphins. The Dolphins do need safety depth, so he brings that. Not only does he bring safety depth, but he also brings good special teams play. If you look at the roster right now, safety is a pretty interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what the Dolphins do with that position because it does need improvement. But they do add depth at that position, and they add a pretty good special teams player. So an overall, a solid signing by the Dolphins there. Nothing too crazy compared to the other stuff that's happened. That's for sure. This next news story comes from Pro Football Rumors, and this is a pretty big one. This is one I think kind of came out of left field for some people. It came out of left field for me. I didn't even have him on my offensive lineman to watch for a list because it is such an under-the-radar signing, but I think it's a pretty good one nonetheless. This comes from Pro Football Rumors. Dolphins to sign Eric Flowers to a $30 million deal. The Dolphins have agreed to sign Eric Flowers, according to ESPN's Adam Schefter. Once finalized, it'll be a 3-year deal worth $30 million with $19 million of that guaranteed. Flowers has floundered in his early years with the Giants, was not expected to find free agent riches at the outside of the offseason. However, the dearth of quality offensive line help around the league bolstered his market tremendously. Lately, we've heard rumors that Flowers could fetch $10 million a year on his next deal. That was indeed the case, and the Dolphins will be the team to pay out that contract. Last year, Flowers earned $3 million with the Redskins playing at guard. Flowers started all 16 games and surprised many with his performance after the Redskins locked down Brandon Sheriff and the Patriots took Joe Thuney off the market with a surprise franchise tag. Flowers was looking better than ever to teams who need interior help. So this is an interesting signing. If you're a Pro Football Focus type of a person, and really, if you're looking for stats on an offensive lineman, it's really the only way you can really get just some sort of stats, really. And I'm not a Pro Football Focus guy at all. I just, you watch the player, are they good or are they not? Most people can decide that for themselves. So if you look at his Focus stats, he led up 2 sacks in the entire year. Again, he played all 16 games, I believe. He did. He was penalized 6 times, which is tied 16th among guards. His overall grade is a 64. There you go. I haven't watched a ton of Ereck Flowers. This one came out of nowhere. He's 6'6", 334 pounds. He had great size and a physicality. The little I've been able to watch from him today when we signed him, he's a big physical dude. He's athletic. We know that. He's a former Hurricane. He didn't work out at tackle for the New York Giants. He was a bust there. Again, former first-round pick. But I forget what's his name for the Redskins offensive line coach who got the interim job. I can't remember his name right now. I think it's Callahan. I can't remember his name right now. Anyway, he obviously used to coach the Raiders. Actually coached him the Super Bowl. Lost to John Gruden. I can't remember his name right now. He's a good offensive line coach. So he was able to develop him, and he was really able to play well at guard. Again, he only gave up 2 sacks, starting all 16 games. He's a physical guy. Again, he's a bigger dude. And he brings that to this offensive line. It's going to be interesting to see what the Dolphins do with Michael Dieter and Jesse Davis. Really, where they end up playing on the offensive line is going to be a story to watch for, because that center job is open. And if you guys remember, at the Senior Bowl, Michael Dieter played better at center than he did at guard at the Senior Bowl, if you guys can remember that. Some people had him playing center coming out of the draft. Now, I know the Dolphins want to address the center position, but it could be in the building already. Like I said, Michael Dieter did play better at the Senior Bowl at center, so there is some flexibility there. So if the Dolphins don't end up finding a replacement for Daniel Kilgore at center, it could already be in-house, and there you go. I mean, who really knows what they're going to do with some of their offensive linemen in-house already? But to me, what this does, it adds a starter who's a quality starter to this offensive line, and it's a major upgrade from what the Dolphins had. It adds talent. It adds not only talent, if the need is there, I guess depth, because I think the Dolphins have some good young guards in-house, or good guards to develop. I wouldn't say good guards in-house. So, again, what this adds to the offensive line, it adds a starter, a quality starter at that. And again, if he gives us 2 sacks, that's up 2 sacks, I'll take that at guard. And he was really good in the running game. The thing that the Redskins did the best over last year was run the football. And that's the biggest thing that he brings to him, in my opinion. The biggest thing that he brings to this offensive line is the ability to run the football, which we couldn't do. Like, we really could not run the football to the point where on 4th and 1s, we were literally passing the ball. And we were a good passing team last year, but that has to change. We have to be less one-dimensional. The Bills are still a good defense in this division. Bill Belichick is still in this division. We can't only do one thing well. And this adds another dimension to the offense that we didn't have before. It really adds a player that we could run behind in the running game, and it improves the running game on offense a good amount. And the thing about Ereck Flowers that does surprise me about him is, he didn't pan in well at guard, but it does surprise me how good he is on the interior of the offensive line, in pass pro and in the running game. And he's an athletic dude. So this adds a lot of different things, but it upgrades the offensive line. It helps us in the running game. This is a great signing by the Dolphins. Now, you might say as a normal fan, I guess, if you were like, oh, this is Ereck Flowers from the Giants, he was a bust. He plays a totally different position. He's way better at that position, and he brings a dimension to this team that it lacks, which is a physical play at the offensive line position, and it again will allow us to run the foot. Now, we need to add more pieces, but this not only adds better pass protection at the guard position, but better run play and run blocking from that position as well. And hopefully we can continue to build off of this. But again, depending on where the Dolphins, this is more interesting than just signing Ereck Flowers, because it's going to be interesting to see where they play Michael Dieter and Jesse Davis this upcoming season. It's going to be really interesting to see how they handle that. Because Ereck Flowers to me is a really good guard, or I would say a good guard. I don't want to overhype him too much because he's not he's not Joe Thuney, but he's a good player and he's a good starter, which this offensive line clearly lacked. So just a big time signing for a lot of different reasons for the Dolphins. There's more to it than just signing Ereck Flowers, because it does add more depth because of the players that the Dolphins already have, and it adds more flexibility to play certain players at different positions. So again, just a little bit more to it. Now, I love the signing. Again, a little bit more under the radar, which I like. That's something that we talked about. Preview free agency is not spending too much money on one player. They got a quality player at a position of need who's going to start and give them quality play. And he's healthy. He doesn't miss games. That's another big deal. The thing about Jake Conklin, who the Cleveland Browns signed, and the reason why he wasn't my number one offensive line free agent, and we talked about this, is his injury history. The great thing about, and that's why Joe Thuney was my number one, but Ereck Flowers, the thing that he brings is a good quality guard play, and he doesn't get injured. And that's something that the Dolphins have not had in like 10 years, it seems like. So this is a better signing than people give it credit for. Because of his injury history, isn't bad. He started all 16 games last year, and he's significantly better at guard than he is at tackle. Again, I can't say a good... And again, this is from a Dolphins fan, and all of us feel this way. We need help at guard. So to sign a quality player at that position, the first day of free agency, really shows that the Dolphins are trying, and they're not lying. They're trying to improve both sides of the line, and they have done that in really one day. That's why I'm excited to see what the rest of the offseason looks like, because they're actually killing it right now. They really are killing it right now. And again, he's by no means like a Pro Bowl type of a player, but again, he's a good quality starter in this league, and that's something that the Dolphins did not have at that position. So it's a great upgrade there. Let's get into this next player who gets me even more excited, and that is Shaq Lhasa for the Buffalo Bills. The Dolphins have signed Shaq Lawson. This comes from Pro Football Rumors. Let's see here. Let me get the exact numbers for you guys. Let's see. I've misplaced it. I apologize. Okay, here we go. Again, this comes from Pro Football Rumors. The Dolphins' interest in Shaq Lawson looks like it will lead to a deal. Let's see here. Miami entered Monday. Oh, God. Sorry, guys. A first-round pick of the Bills in 2016, Lawson recorded a career-high 6.5 sacks last season. He will become the fourth first-round pick currently on the Dolphins' defensive line. It's a 3-year deal worth $30 million. The deal also includes $21 million guaranteed at signing and through incentives. It can reach $36 million. Miami entered. Okay, we don't care about the whole how this looks in their opinion on it. So yeah, again, just to reiterate, just to say that again because I feel like that was kind of confusing. The Dolphins have signed Shaq Lawson, a deal that is worth $30 million. It's $20 million guaranteed, and through incentives, he can earn up to $36 million if he plays the entire 3 years. So again, this is a huge. This is something that we talked about this is the biggest to me hole on the Dolphins defense, and that is the defensive line. We were terrible, and we've been terrible for a long time now in the running game. And the sad part is, especially last year and even this year, because we still have those players, is our linebackers are actually pretty good. It was just our defensive line it lacked talent. And when I say it lacked talent, I mean it really, 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 really lacked talent. And if you're interested in, I got his PFF stats, and again, I've actually watched a lot of Shaq Lawson today and previously previewing free agency. Let's see here. His PFF grade is a 68. He had 7 sacks in 2019, 1 forced fumble. I think he had 13 TFLs if I'm not mistaken. So let me give you my opinion on Shaq Lawson. He's 6'3", 267 pounds. He actually looks bigger than that. He ran a 4.7 40. The thing that impresses me when you watch Shaq Lawson, two things. Two things really impress me. Two things I really think that impress me and that I think are actually special, not just good, about his game is the run defense. Okay, that's the number one thing that stands out for me. And the second thing that stands out to me that I think is special for someone his size and his ability to tackle too, because he finishes plays, is his speed. The thing that is really, when you watch him, the thing that stands out is his backside defense to really close on some of the backside runs, and his ability to chase running backs and finish tackles behind the line of scrimmage on the opposite side of the field is special. There's not many defensive linemen that can do that. Not only can he do that, but he can stand up anybody in the running game and really make a tackle in the backfield. He's a disruptor in the running game. He's a physical player who finishes physically, and he's a bigger defensive lineman. He's by far the biggest defensive lineman on the Dolphins right now. These are some, just to give you an idea of how small we've been at defensive end, especially. I'm going to give you some numbers here. When you talk about Vince Biegel, okay, who's obviously our best defensive lineman, or our best line of scrimmage player. Or not line of scrimmage. Well, yeah. But I'll say best defensive lineman. Because he's considered an outside linebacker. But you guys know what I'm talking about. Okay, Vince Biegel is 6'4". Okay. Let me give you his weight here. I know that sounds weird to look up another man's. Okay, so he's 6'4". He's 240. Okay. Now, if you look at Vince Biegel... If you look at Vince Biegel, he doesn't look like he's 6'4", 240 at all. He's a very slender dude. Okay? Shaq almost has 30 pounds on him. Okay? He's an inch shorter, and he's just as fast. So we're getting bigger and more athletic and faster up front by adding Shaq Lawson. And a really good run, a special run defender. Shaq is the best thing he does, in my opinion, is defend the run. And that is something that this team has needed for a long, long, long time. Now let's talk about some, again, like I said, the way his backside pursuit at the defensive end position is incredible, dude. For someone his size, the one thing that you notice when you watch him is his athleticism just pops. And one other thing that I want to bring up about Shaq Lawson is we'll talk about his pass rush really quick. He's a good pass rusher. He's nothing special. I would say again, he's a good pass rusher. You know, he gives you, sacks don't tell the story with him. He gets good pressures. He's had quite a bit of quarterback hits over his career. And that's just, he's in people's faces. He's got to get rid of the football. Quarterbacks have to get rid of the football. Because usually when he touches a quarterback, they're going down. He finishes plays at a very, very, very good clip. So again, nothing special. This isn't a Cameron Wake in terms. This is not a Yannick Ngakoue. This isn't someone who dominates the game in terms of his pass rush ability, but he's a really good all-around defensive end who's a special run defender, and he's an athletic player as well. He's very explosive for his size. And it says he runs a 4.7. If you watch him play, and we've all watched him play. Against the Bills, I mean, he's especially the last 2 years, he's had ridiculous games against us. And granted, he's going against probably the worst offensive lines the last 2 years in the NFL, but he's absolutely destroyed us in the running game, especially. I mean, we just haven't been able to run on him. So I've been sidetracked myself. So we talked about pass rush and his feel for the game. His football instincts are really, really, really good. Whether it's on stunts or his ability to get his hands up and deflect footballs. If you watch Shaq, I mean, the amount of deflections that he gets is pretty crazy. It's like J.J. Watt level crazy. The amount of balls he deflects at the defensive line position. And the other thing I want to bring up before we move on about Shaq Lawson that I noticed is, again, his athleticism. His ability to finish plays against athletic quarterbacks is a very, when you look at what he was able to do, in effect, he had a good game against the playoffs and against the Texans. And some of the athletic quarterbacks that he's played over the years, he's been able to chase them down and finish plays, which is something that this team has lacked a lot, is just speed up front. Physicality and speed is what he brings. And he brings, obviously, a quality starter to this. And he's a perfect fit for this defense because he is versatile. You can actually move him inside or outside. Because of his athleticism and his size, he's able to do both. And he's a strong player. So He brings a lot to this defense. I cannot say enough about Shaq Lawson. Probably my second favorite signing of free. I know that sounds crazy, but I really like Shaq Lawson. And again, not the greatest pass rusher in the world, but he's a really good player. I like him a lot. And again, his run defense is special. He's one of the better run defenders in the NFL at his position, in my opinion, because he does a lot of different things to disrupt the run. So again, what the Dolphins are getting from him, they're getting a good quality, a good pass rusher, a great run defender. This adds speed and size and athleticism to the front. And not to mention, he's got good chemistry with Christian Wilkins, obviously, former college teammates. People bringing, I just had to bring, not that matters, but I thought I would bring it up. So I really, really, really enjoy, I really like this signing a lot. Because it's something that we talked about a lot, and it's something that the Dolphins desperately needed. And again, just to bring up one more player, Tako Charlton, who was believe it or not, at points in the season, a 3-down player for the Dolphins. Just to compare their physical traits, okay? Tako is 6'6", and the man looks like he weighs 150 pounds. I mean, he is a tall, gangly type of a dude. Okay, he's not listed like that. He's 6'6", 270. He doesn't look like that, and he definitely doesn't play it at all. And believe it or not, now Shaq Lawson has a belly on him. You know, he looks like he looks like a bigger dude. Is a faster player than Tako Charlton, at least for combine stats. Shaq Lawson, he ran a 4.6 40. Tako Charlton ran a 4.9, almost a 4.5. So he's a better athlete too, bigger, stronger. At least how they play, and a better athlete as well. So again, this is a great upgrade for this team. Very underrated. Maybe I would say this is probably my third favorite, because the other two are, pretty good, pretty special. Let's get into Kyle Van Noy. Okay, so this comes from Pro Football Rumors. The Dolphins have agreed to terms with outside linebacker Kyle Van Noy. This comes from Pro Football Rumors. The Dolphins are staying busy. Miami is signing Kyle Van Noy away from the Patriots shortly after we heard the Jets were talking to the outside linebacker. According to Mark Garafolo of NFL Network, the Dolphins have signed him. Anyway, in other words, almost the entire AFC East was involved in some way. It's a big payday for Kyle Van Noy, as the Dolphins are giving him a 4-year, $51 million contract. Ian Rappaport of NFL Network tweets, $30 million of that is guaranteed. Miami just gave a record-breaking contract, we'll get into that later, to a certain player. So they're certainly spending big to revamp their defense. The move to sign Kyle Van Noy makes plenty of sense, as he played for Dolphins head coach Brian Flores when Flores was the defensive coordinator in New England. Now we're already 22 minutes in, but I mean this dude is insane. So Kyle Van Noy, he was my top three, one of my top free agency gets for the Dolphins. In terms of my dream scenarios, what I really wanted the Dolphins to do, he was in my top 5. Kyle Van Noy, I love Kyle Van Noy. Anytime we've ever played him, he's been a big problem for this team, especially in the run game. And this is another player who isn't a great pass rusher, because when you look at the outside linebacker position, and especially in a 3-4 defense, you expect them to be, especially you give somebody that kind of money. It's not crazy money, but it's a good amount of money. You're like, as a Dolphins, does he? It's hard to say if you've never heard of Kyle Van Noy, because you guys watch him 2 times a year, but he isn't that. He's a disruptor. You hear this a lot about Jadeveon Clowney. Well, he doesn't have the sack numbers. Well, same thing with Kyle Van Noy. He doesn't have 15 sacks a year. He's not like a Von Miller in terms of he gives you this great sack production. But he does everything exceptionally well. He's a great run defender. He's a good pass rusher. He's great on blitzes. If you do some stunts with him, do some crazy things up front to spring someone free, he's great for that. He's great instincts. He can drop back in coverage. He's got good athleticism as well, so he brings some speed to this defense, and he brings a physical play style with him. And he's a great tackler in the open field. And again, he sets the edge in the run game, and that's something that we talked about a lot, is someone who can affect the run game in defense, and he does that. And again, this is someone who's a disruptor, a great disruptor, not a good disruptor, a great disruptor on defense. He does everything. He's that classic Rob Ninkovich Mike Vrabel type of an outside linebacker. And that's the outside linebacker that this defense needs. It needs a player like Kyle Van Noy to be successful. And, we've seen, like I just said, Rob Ninkovich, Mike Vrabel and I think he's a better player than those two. I really do. I think he's a better athlete. I think he's a better pass rusher than those two were. Maybe not. Rob was a little bit better in terms of his pass rush moves and some of the things he could do to get to the quarterback, but I think Kyle is a better overall player than he was. And that's really what his job is in this defense. And again, the Patriots still wanted him to come back. Again, the Jets, Bills, they all had some sort of interest in him. This is a high-value player who is one of my favorite players in free agency. I think he's going to make a major impact on this team. It's going to be interesting to see. And again, last year the team didn't have a true outside linebacker, especially for this defense. I mean, really towards the end of the year, who was having the most success at that position was Sam McGuavin. When you think about Raekwon McMillan, he was only out there on 2 downs, and Jerome Baker was basically a 3-down player, and he was in our nickel package. But in terms of an outside linebacker, we really didn't have one. It was either Vince Biegel or Sam McGuavin would sometimes play in that position. But Tako Charlton, I think, slid in there a couple times, which is crazy to think about. He's really just not a good athlete, especially side to side. Just not very good. But Kyle Van Noy really brings that to this defense. Here's what I'll say about this. A true New England defense outside linebacker is the best way I can explain it. And he's a perfect fit. When you talk about scheme fit, not just getting a great player, but a schematical fit, he's a perfect signing for the Dolphins. When you taking all of those other things, he really fits he checks all the boxes. He's a fit in many different ways. Again, he's a really good player who brings disruption, whether it's in the pass game, run game, at a high level, smart player, and adds speed to this front as well. And again, just a huge hole that the position needed to be filled. And this isn't filled by a first-year player who's going to have to learn a year before we really see the fruits of our labor. This is a player who's 28 years old, still in his prime, that's going to bring... and he doesn't have to learn a new defense. He's coming right into New England's defense. So again, this is just a perfect signing to me all the way around. I love Kyle Van Noy. And again, some people are going to look at his sack numbers and be like, well, that's not his job. He's asked to do a lot of different things in his defense. And I think the Dolphins are going to benefit greatly. And I really don't think, when you look at the contract, it's a 4-year, $51 million deal. He's not getting paid that much, $30 million guaranteed. It's a shorter deal than some of the other deals that other players are getting. And it's not like we're breaking the bank that much. Now, we have spent a lot collectively, but I don't think that's an obscene amount for someone like Kyle Van Noy, in my opinion. So let's get to the crown jewel of one day. Guys, this is one day of free agency. This is what the Dolphins did. They filled their defensive front up front is significantly better. They added a really good player. Well, I don't want to overhype it. A really good player. I shouldn't say great. A really good player, Shaq Lawson, and a really, 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 really good player in Kyle Van Noy. Okay, not to mention they've already have a really good core of young linebackers as well in-house. So they added a pretty dang good guard as well. A good guard, a good starter in this league, in Eric Flowers. Okay, they had a good special teams player and add some depth and some depth at safety. Okay, and Clayton from the Cincinnati Bengals. And that's not all, ladies and gentlemen. They have also added a top 5, one of the best corners in the National Football League, which I did not see this coming. I really didn't think the Dolphins were going to go after a big name like this. The Dolphins have signed, this comes from Pro Football Rumors, cornerback Byron Jones from the Dallas Cowboys. Just moments after, again, this comes from Pro Football Rumors, just moments after James Bradberry agreed to sign with the Giants, another top cornerback has been taken off the market. Byron Jones has inked a deal with the Dolphins. According to NFL.com's Ian Rappaport, it's a 5-year, $82 million deal. Adam Schefter reports. The deal includes $57 million guaranteed and $40 million through the first 2 seasons. The contract will make Jones the highest paid player at his position, with the deal paying him $16 million annually. We heard last week that the market for the cornerback was expected to start at $16 to $17 million a year. Jones' new teammate Xavier Howard previously led all corners with a $15 million annual salary. That salary led all cornerbacks at the time. ESPN tweets that the Dolphins were willing to give Jones more guaranteed money than rival suitors, while Rappaport notes that the Raiders made a competitive offer to get the defensive back, which Scott Blair of NBC reported that about the Raiders. Furthermore, NFL Network's Mike Garafolo tweets that both Miami and Vegas offered huge money in tax-free states, but Miami's structure of upfront money appealed to Jones. A number of teams, including the Raiders, Broncos, Lions, Eagles, Giants, and Jets, had been connected to Jones at some point this offseason. The Cowboys had expressed some optimism in retaining the Pro Bowler. However, the Cowboys had some bigger fish to fry with Dak Prescott and Amari Cooper. Jones is 27, played safety during his 3 years in Dallas, but switched to corner in 2018, promptly earning Pro Bowl and second-team All-Pro in honors. In 2019, he started 14 games for the Cowboys and ranked 14th in Pro Football Focus's quarterback grades. He ranked 14th. According to Pro Football Focus. Anyway, I don't know why I got so twisted up in that. Oh my god. So, really, I don't really have to talk about Byron Jones too much because we already know what he adds to this defense. First of all, we play most of the time, we had the 3rd highest percentage of cover 1 defense. Meaning, you are really on an island with... Depending on where the free safety is, and if you're shading, it's like, okay, this guy's going to be double teamed. It really depends on what the game plan is. But basically, you're on an island. And sometimes very rarely though, we played too deep. So cover 1 defense, again, you're on an island by yourself, basically. For most of the players, at least. Sometimes you maybe have someone dropping in the middle of the defense that could give you some help. So you're not really on an island. You have some help scenarios, but you're pretty much on an island in a cover. Not cover 1. I thought I said cover 0, excuse me. But yeah, cover 1 defense. Meaning we play a lot of man-to-man coverage. I think it was something like 60% of the time we play man-to-man coverage. That's 3rd highest in the NFL. The other 2 are the Lions and Patriots. The Patriots are number 1, the Lions are the 2nd. What do they all have in common? They all run the same defensive scheme. The reason we didn't play more man coverage, especially after the first 3 weeks of the season, and really when we started winning more games, is because of the lack of talent on this team, especially after we lost X. You know, I think we tuned it down a little bit more than we were, especially, I thought we ran more man at the beginning of the year, and then again, like I said, as the year went on, I think we kind of got away from it a little bit more than we were calling it at the beginning of the year. So, in saying that, this is a player who's a you can put him on an island, and he's got he's 6'1", he can run with anybody, can jump with anybody. He's a great player. He's one of the 5 best at his position. We already had a player at that position who's one of the 5 best when he's healthy at that position. To have 2 of those players at this defense, and we talked about it previewing free agency. I said I really think that the Brian Flores or Chris Greer, because of how the Patriots build their team, where they start from secondary and then they go to the defensive line. That's how they do it. I thought maybe we would invest in more corners than the team or than fans would like. I didn't think the Dolphins were going to get the best defensive back on the market. This surprised me. I could have sworn he might have went to Denver or even or Las Vegas, somewhere like that. I didn't think he would be a Dolphin. I really didn't expect this. So when I saw the news, I was jumping up and down. I really couldn't believe it. I'm even happier that we signed Byron Jones than I was when we signed Sue. I mean, this came out of nowhere. I really didn't think this was gonna be a thing. I am so happy that we got Byron Jones. Here's why. We have now, depending on what happens to X. Now I hope we don't, because I hope X has had some issues in the offseason. But the Dolphins had their opportunity to trade him last year, so I don't think maybe the offseason has changed that. I hope not. Let's say these two, and I think it's a really good chance that because corners, like I said, are very valuable in this defense, and they're valued more higher than I think, again, because we play so much cover one, that you need defensive players, talented defensive backs. So you need a lot of them too. So to have the best starting, I'm gonna say this, we have the best cornerback tandem in the National Football League after one day. And if that doesn't blow your mind and get you hyped up, I really don't know what does. There's not much else I can really say about Byron Jones. He's a great cover corner. He can do everything. He can play zone, man. It really doesn't matter. He's done it all in New England, in Dallas. He's literally done it all. They play a lot of cover 2 down there, a lot of cover 3. And sometimes they did a little bit of a mismatch where he would just follow the number 1 team's receiver. He's a special player, man. He's a great player. And to match him up with the other best corner in the National Football League is amazing. I think this is better than the AJ Boye. I don't even think this is an argument that it's better than the AJ Boye, Jalen Ramsey. When you look at X's, and this is, hey man, you might, now I'm not saying, but I'm saying, you know what I'm saying? Now I might be hot stepping a little bit here in terms of being a Dolphins fan, you guys, and maybe I'm getting a little too high on my horse, but this is the best cornerback tandem since Aqib Talib and Chris Harris, and I really do believe that. I don't think those two won a Super Bowl, so I'm not going to go there, but if you compare this to Jalen Ramsey and AJ Boye, which was probably the last great one, Byron Jones is a way better player than AJ Boye, and Xavier Howard is a way better player than AJ Boye. If you compare production with X and Jalen Ramsey, X has a better production than Jalen Ramsey does. Now, I'm not saying X is a better player than Jalen Ramsey, but, I think it's a little bit closer than people give it credit for. So, this is going to be a fun tandem to watch, ladies and gentlemen. This is like back in the day with Patrick Surtain and Sam Madison. Even though these two players, I think, are more talented than those two were. And I'm not smoking, I'm not crazy when I say that. I'm being dead serious. Xavier Howard is a special player. He had, the most picks in his first few years than anyone in NFL history. And he almost broke the pick record, which is Paul Krause's at 12, I think. Maybe it's Dick Lane. If he didn't get injured. 2 years ago. So this is a special tandem, okay? This is a very special tandem. I think the only thing that people, and we'll talk about this later, but really the only flaw that I have with Byron Jones is he doesn't get thrown out at all. When he played the Saints, Michael Thomas, I think, had a few targets with 0 yards or something crazy like that. It's something insane. I'll look up the stats for you guys because I don't want to get this wrong. But this is against the best receiver who won Offensive Player of the Year. This is just last year, ladies and gentlemen. This is the stats, okay? 0 receptions. He caught 0. This is someone who's catching NFL record amount of catches. Against Byron Jones, he had 0. 0. Against a Sean Payton offense that has a million different ways to get receivers open in that offense. The best, according to the NFL, the best receiver in the league who won Offensive Player of the Year shouldn't have won it. Christian McCaffrey should have won it. But the point is that is a player who almost was 300 yards away from 2,000 yards receiving that he didn't allow a reception to. Okay, this is not hype, ladies and gentlemen. This is real. Okay, I'm very excited about this. The reason I'm even more excited about it is because the Dolphins took care of the defensive front the first day. Now they still can add a few players to the interior and one more. I think they need one more outside linebacker. Even though Vince Biegel could be that, and now that I think about it, they really don't need it as much as because Vince Biegel could play on the other position. I know some of you guys really like him, even though I think he is a little bit overrated, but it is what it is. Vince Biegel's still a good player, and he's still a young player who's developing. Not only did they add talent to the defensive front, which was desperately needed, they got one of the best corners in the NFL in the same day. And when you look at the division, now that Stephon Diggs is in it, and you got John Brown on that Buffalo Bills defense, we needed these two players, and hopefully the Dolphins keep these two together and make. I mean, this is going to be a great tandem for a long time. Both of these guys are super young. And one thing I want to say before we move on, because we've spent almost 40 minutes on news, is we've had a lot of speculation of how aggressive this team is going to be. This team is trying to win. I mean, you don't make these signings and spend this much money if you're not trying to win. And a lot of people brought the argument up for Xavier Howard, especially someone like Omar Kelly, who was like, well, why don't you just trade X? Because 3 or 4 years down the line, it may have been actually Dave Hyde, 3 or 4 years down the line, he might be out of his prime. This kind of aggressiveness, we're ready to go now. What did I say before this free agency started? And I didn't know if they were going to do this. We've seen it over the last 5 years. Teams can transfer. The Jaguars did it. Cleveland did it, but it didn't work. I mean, they added a lot of talent, but it didn't necessarily work. The Colts did it to a certain extent. The Packers did it to a certain extent with the Smith brothers. Completely changed their defense. It doesn't take more. You can change your team in a year. I mean, we've seen it happen a few times in recent years. The Chiefs did it with getting rid of Alex Smith. And again, they had a good team before, but they got Sammy Watkins in the same offseason, which really changes the team. That's not a good example, but the point is you can make major moves to make significant changes in your organization and your roster is what I'm trying to say, and be a better team, a significantly better team. And it's good to see that this team is taking that approach in terms of adding as much talent as they could and can, instead of sitting on it and waiting and doing all that stuff. And I think they did the best they could better than the best that they could in a day. And this proves that, and again, my original point was, this team's going to be more competitive faster than a lot of people thought. And I'm so happy about that, because that's one of the things I said. I think people were like, maybe 3 to 4 years. No, dude, that's insane. That is insane, especially in today's climate when people are getting rid of, DeAndre Hopkins for a first-round pick. I mean, talent is exchanging hands faster than ever before in the NFL. With the cap space going up next year, that to me is not a good enough excuse anymore. I think you can build a team pretty quick in the National Football League, quicker than you ever could before, and I think the Dolphins are proving that. Not only that, but this is a very specific and special situation because of the assets the Dolphins can, have. With the moves that they made on the day, again, only one day at free agency, and the draft capital that they have, the sky is the limit, and the amount of talent that this team can add is a significant amount. And they have 5 picks in the first 2 rounds. I mean, this is just getting me so excited. I gotta stop talking about it. Believe it or not, we have one more news story to go through. And I really don't I do share an opinion on this. I don't necessarily think the Dolphins should do this. And I think we've talked about this a lot. And, this has been the biggest topic of news as of late. But it's being brought up again because of the moves the Dolphins made today. So I want to bring this up. I had this article ready to go. And let's see here. I have misplaced it, guys. I'm sorry, I've done this a couple times today. Sorry, everybody. Again, I don't know how hyped you guys are. Okay, but I'm pretty dang hyped. Okay, so this comes from a Boston. Let me get this. This news story comes from Mike Lynch at WCVB in Boston, so some radio show. This is a news story that I thought was interesting. So again, this is where this comes from. Maybe we shouldn't cross Miami off the list of potential destinations for Tom Brady just yet. According to Mike Lynch, a longtime sports anchor for Boston, the Dolphins are very interested in Tom Brady. It wouldn't be at all surprising, except for people in the Dolphins organization. Okay, so I thought that was an interesting report. There was a few other tweets that people are tweeting out that, maybe because of the moves that listen. The offensive line isn't completely fixed, and I don't want to get too hyped up here, and the defensive line isn't completely fixed. The Dolphins could add, I think, 2 more players to the defensive line. But I think it's definitely getting there. I think people, just because of the talent that the team added in one day, it just becomes an interesting. I'll throw this out here because I don't want to talk about this. I want to get into the fan Q&A. And before we get into the fan Q&A, I want to bring up 3 more extra players because we have a lot of questions to answer that the Dolphins still could get. Here's what I will say. It's not the craziest plan in the world if the Dolphins were to take Tom Brady and sign him and still draft Tua in the top 5. If they were able to do that, would it be the worst plan ever? And try to really just add as much talent as they can with this roster. Would it be the worst idea in the world? That's the question I pose to you guys. It's an interesting one. It's an interesting thing that it would take an entire other podcast to really dive deep into something like that. So let's move on to I'm just gonna name like 3 players and we're gonna move on to the fan Q&A. Okay, so there's a couple sign and trade candidates that I really think are interesting. And there's also some free agents. Bud Dupree, I think, as far as I know, is still out there. I could be wrong about that. Okay, so no, he's been tagged. Bud Dupree's been tagged. Judon's still out there. Matthew Judon's still out there as maybe a sign and trade candidate. I'm trying to think if there's any other players. I'm drawing a huge blank because of all the other things I was thinking about. I would say there's other. Okay, I think there's definitely other players. I mean, running back Todd Gurley is he could be cut in the next few days. Melvin Gordon is still out there. I think the Dolphins could add one more interior lineman, maybe like a DJ Reader or someone like that. And maybe a defensive end or not, maybe one more outside linebacker somewhere up front. Again, they can still, I think, in terms of offensive line, the tackles for free agency are pretty much all. It's not really there. I think they're going to really have to address that in the draft. But interior wise, there's still Joe Thuney. He's a signing trade candidate. Or tag a trade candidate, I should say. So there are still players out there that the Dolphins could obtain. Glasgow's gone. Conklin's gone. So the offensive line market's a little low, but there's still a couple more players out there. So let's get into the fan Q&A. I'm sorry I took so long on that, the news. But oh my God, just what a great day for this organization. And being able to fill so many holes and be able to really accumulate a lot of talent in one day. And again, not only did they accumulate this much talent in one day of free agency, but they still have a ton of assets in the draft as well. Okay, so let's get into the fan Q&A. This first question comes from Tech Me Out. He says, Burrow aside, my favorite quarterback of the draft is Tua, pending medical, of course. However, I really like Herbert. If Tua, for some reason, didn't become a Dolphin, I wouldn't be unhappy with Herbert as the future. I like him for the same reasons that I like Deshaun Watson. Those are very different players, in my opinion. So much which is the intangible that can't be taught, which is knowing how to win. This is also, I think, the missing ingredient in Love, who is in every circumstance I can remember couldn't carry his team. Herbert has shown the ability to put the team on his back and make plays when it counts. I think this is huge for a quarterback to be considered elite. And I love his enthusiasm and durability. How do you feel if Herbert does end up being the number 1 pick this year? For the Dolphins, I don't like it. I don't like Justin Herbert. First of all, there's a couple things there. In terms of reports, a lot of, the teammates said he kind of keeps to him, this is reports. Now, some of these reports for other quarterbacks have not been true. But this is the only thing we can really go off of. The reports from his teammates at Oregon is he really keeps to himself. He really doesn't, he's not one of the guys, I guess I would say. This is something that I read on ESPN. Now, I don't know if this is true or not. In terms of the best game he had was his last game against Wisconsin, but he really reminds me of Ryan Tannehill. He ran a way faster 40 than I thought he would, but he doesn't use it enough. He doesn't improvise enough. I think he sits in the pocket way too long, and again, I've said this a lot. He doesn't improvise. His instincts, his ability, like a Deshaun Watson, to make something out of nothing, isn't really there. Now, he's got, again, people have said this a million times, the dude's got a really strong arm. He didn't have a really a good scheme in Oregon. And this is from people that know, again, more than this is stuff that you hear. All I can say is what I see. I just don't think he's a better football player than a player like Deshaun Watson in terms of his ability to create by himself. I think Tua is a better pocket passer than he is, and I think he's a better improviser than Herbert is. Herbert scares me for the same reasons that Tannehill really didn't succeed. Is because it took him a while. His instincts weren't that good. I don't think it was his pocket presence that everybody. He just really didn't know how to use his physical gifts. I think that's the thing I really don't like about Herbert. So let's move on from there. We're about to run out of time. I'm so sorry, guys. We'll keep these questions for sure because there's so many. Let's see here. Let's try to get let's see here. This next question comes from Logan. He says, with the pending release of G5, do you think our defensive and or team as a whole lacks leadership? And who is the leader now? X? This is a great question. Okay, so reportedly, Vince Biegel was one of the biggest assets of him, and one of the reasons that the coaching staff loved him so much was he's such a good leader. So I think Vince is still in the locker room. Apparently, Byron Jones is a great leader. If you watch his Top 100 video, I can't remember who it was, his NFL Top 100 video, but they talked about how good of a leader he was on that video too. So maybe Byron Jones can come in and be that leader as well. This next question comes from Derry. He says, "Hey Skaggs, should the Dolphins pursue recently cut Xavier Rhodes?" No. Xavier Rhodes is out. He's washed up. This next question comes from Listen Without Warning. He says, what's the most we would have to give up to move to number 1 in the draft? I don't know. And I really don't want to give anything up, if I'm being honest. It's a very confusing situation to be if you're Chris Greer. I really don't want to give up a ton of assets. Let's just put it that way. This next question comes from John. He says, do you think we will pick 14 players in this NFL draft? Do I think we'll keep all of our draft picks? No, I don't. This next question comes from TR3MC. He says, would drafting a center be better than picking one up in free agency? Like I said earlier in the show, I think people underestimate the fact that Michael Dieter actually might play center. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. This next question comes with Listen Without Warning. He says, should we re-sign Cameron Wake? No, Cameron Wake is not the same player. And he's not a good scheme fit. This next question comes from Charlie. He says, any possibility the Dolphins don't take a quarterback with the number 5 pick? I'm trying to answer these questions as fast as possible. Is there a chance? No, I don't think so. This next question comes from Jack. He says, thoughts on Flowers? Love him, for the same reasons we've already explained. This next question comes from Beef Kimchi. He says, do you think the Miami Dolphins have no interest in drafting Tua? Nope, I do. I think they have a lot of interest in drafting Tua. I think a lot of it is just speculation and smoke. If anything, just smoke screen. This next question comes from Josh Hart. He says, would Melvin Gordon be a good fit for our team? Yes, he would. For the right price. Beef Kimchi says, do you think Brian Flores can help out Byron Jones become a better defensive back as far as being able to pick the ball off? A lot of that has to do with his interception production. He doesn't get thrown at, and I would say one of the things that I don't love about Byron Jones, if I were to critique him in one thing, is I wish he would get his head around a little bit more when a tad more sometimes. But some of the times when you see he's in very difficult situations that I really take back. It's an interesting in between right there, because some of the times where you see maybe I wish he got his head around right there on a 50-50 ball. He never gets called for pass interference. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is just maybe you could have picked that ball off if just some technical things like that. I don't think, but again, he's in very tough situations when those. So I don't know. I don't know if that's a reflex of his or if it's just because of the situation. I'm not really sure. But that is something that you do see about him. But it's nothing to worry about. He doesn't get penalized. He's a great corner. He's a great cover corner. And he definitely swats a lot of pass. He doesn't get thrown at. Anyway. This question comes from Beef. Kibji says, do you think it's better not to make any moves in free agency and go to the draft? I don't think you should spend obscene amounts of money on one player that would cap strap you for 10 years and make bad decisions that we've made in the past. But I think you still have to spend your money. I still think you do. It's a way to accumulate talent. So no, I don't think it's good to just skip on free agency. People say that a lot and say stuff like that. Oh, it's better. There's more. I can point out more teams that try to build through the draft that fail than are successful at building through the draft. I can name just as many teams the same thing in free agency. So I think you just have to be good at picking talent. I don't think there's one necessary method that gets you to win a ton of games more than the other, whether it's building through free agency or the draft. I think you just have to make smart decisions as a GM. This next question comes from Richard. He says, Jordan Love would be a good fit in Chan Gailey's spread offense than Tua. No, he wouldn't. Tua is a way better quarterback. I disagree with you, Richard. Let's see here. Tua, first of all, scheme for quarterbacks. Unless he's unless the guy's unathletic, it really doesn't matter. Like, maybe he doesn't. I guess I see what you're saying, but it really doesn't apply to most really talented quarterbacks, in my opinion, in terms of scheme. Like, they could fit any scheme. Yeah, I think we can answer a few more questions. This next question comes from John. I don't think he says, what do you think about this Dolphins free agency that I planned out? Frank Gore for 1 year, Jack Conklin for 5 years, $13 million a year, Graham Glasgow 3 years, $7 million a year, Danny Shelton 2 years, $4 million, Marcus Golden 3 years, $11 million, Vic Beasley 1 year, $4 million, Artie Burns 1 year, $1 million, Miles Killebrew 1 year, $900K. Re-sign Adrian Colbert 1 year, $650K. Cut Albert Wilson, Tako Charlton, Allen Hurts. Trade Charles Harris to Kansas City for a 21 sixth rounder. Some of that stuff is some of the players that I actually like on your list, though. I think the best player that I like the most on your list is Marcus Golden, who I still I don't know if he got signed yet. I'm not sure, but I hope the Dolphins look into him because he's a very good player. Let's see. Do we have? See if we can answer any more questions. This next question comes from Ray Gonzalez. He says, "Hey Skaggs, love your videos. The NFL draft is coming up real soon, and I have some questions for you. Do you think we would trade up from 5 to secure Tua? And if we were the GM, would you? And my question is, would you like the idea of drafting DeAndre Swift at 26, or would you rather take someone like an offensive tackle and wait for the second round of drafting a running back of his caliber?" I would rather take a tackle because there are 3 really good running backs in this draft that I think if you got either one of the 3, you're going to be pretty much set for, a long time. I like Jonathan Taylor a lot. I think J.K. Dobbins, to me, he's my favorite running back in the draft. His production in college is insane, and he's a good running back. And same thing with Jonathan Taylor. I mean, they both have great production. And I think the thing about Jonathan Taylor is he's way faster than I gave him credit for. So, yes. And DeAndre Swift, he's a smaller back. He's only 5'8". I think the danger with him is he could be more of a one-dimensional running back. I think that would be the scary thing, but I don't think that's going to happen. He's a very talented running back. I think he's a 3-down guy. So yeah, I mean, I think you could just take a tackle and we we have 5 picks in the first 2 rounds, and I think you can get a really good running back that can start for you in the second round. So I think a tackle is the best way to go. Joe Thomas, who is one of the best left tackles in the history of the league, said this is one of the deepest tackle drafts that he has seen. So I think it would be smart to take a tackle, whether it's the one out of Houston or out of, I think it's Georgia. Those 2, I think his name Andrew Thomas. I can't remember his name. I like both of them a lot. The Georgia tackle, to me, I think could be a better NFL player. I don't... who knows? I could be totally wrong about that. But when I watched him, I think there's something about him I really like. Maybe it's because he's an SEC player. I don't know. But yeah, I think the smart thing to do would be to take a tackle there. And maybe you take 2 tackles. And I wouldn't be mad about that. Especially with how if free agency's going. I'm like, all right, take 2 tackles, dude. I really don't, at this point, I mean, that's probably the smartest thing to do. With 18 and 20, was this 26th pick? So to get 2, and again, from someone like Joe Thomas to say this is one of the deeper tackle drafts he's seen, I mean, that might be the best move to get 2 young tackles and a starting young, like Tua, or if you're a Herbert guy or you're a Jordan Love guy, whatever you are, you get 2 tackles to protect him for 15 years. I think would be awesome. So I would go tackle. So that is going to be it, guys. It's been a crazy day. I am hyped up. Woo! I'm hyped up. I'm super excited. So, yeah, I can't wait to know what we're gonna go through everything that happens the rest of the week in next week's show. I am Skagster83, and I cannot wait to see you guys and talk Dolphins football with you guys in the next one.